Today on the Big 3 in 30, Puka Nacua is in rehab.
The news was confirmed by Puka's attorney.
The Bears give an update on their stadium search.
Towing the line, saying, well, we might want to go to Indiana, we might want to stay in Illinois.
And the Patriots need to find a number one receiver for Drake Maye.
Everyone knows the Pats need an alpha wide receiver.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NFL, the three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NFL starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Puka Nacua's attorney announced Wednesday that the Rams wide receiver is in rehab after a lawsuit alleged he made anti-Semitic comments and bit a woman in a New Year's Eve incident. Nacua has apparently been in rehab since before those allegations, and Locked On Rams host Doug McCain has the full story.
Los Angeles Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua has checked himself into a rehab clinic in Malibu. This is according to the California Post. The news was confirmed by Puka's attorney, and the Post has stated that the receiver has been at a luxury treatment center. Now, Puka was recently accused of biting a woman and also making anti-Semitic remarks on a New Year's Eve party this past December. The woman's request for a temporary restraining order was completely withdrawn, but Puka is still being sued. McCathern, who is Puka's lawyer, said that Puka's decision to enter rehab is not directly in response to the lawsuit, but the stories that have been written about the Rams wide receiver recently were, quote, certainly a contributing factor. Puka has been in rehab for, quote, a substantial period of time and is scheduled to be there for a while longer. McCathern also said that Puka's goal, and this is from the California Post, that it is to, quote, improve his overall behavior in every aspect of his life, that he can do it. And I'm really proud of him doing it and doing it in the off season. So there was photos, there's pictures that have surfaced online of him going in and out of the treatment center in March, and Puka's attorney said that he's doing absolutely fabulous and is in great spirits, though there's no reasons about the visit. There's nothing specific. I mean, his hair is short, it's not long, and yeah, I mean, this is really a bombshell development in all of this, and I think there's a couple ways you can look at this, is that Puka completely understands the severity of the allegations and how his behavior might be impacting his image among fans, not just the Los Angeles Rams, but of the overall National Football League. And this is a timeline of events that before the allegations, Puka, there was video of him stumbling and drunk at the Super Bowl. And yes, that's not illegal. And he was being driven around and he didn't have any issues there other than, hey, this is a young guy having some beers, and there's nothing that's illegal about that. But I think from an optics standpoint, clearly the league and Puka and the Rams and Sean McVay and Les Snead, they probably don't want their future face of the franchise kind of being viewed as like that. I mean, can you imagine if Shohei Ohtani did the same thing, or Luka Doncic did the same thing? The Lakers, the Dodgers would probably not be very excited about that. The live stream issue during the season was when he had Aiden Ross, who had him perform a anti-Semitic dance. He didn't know it was an anti-Semitic dance. He did later apologize for it, and he made the officials very upset when he had those negative comments about the officiating, and ultimately the league fined him $25,000. Now, the Rams did have prior knowledge of the New Year's Eve incident before it was reported, and Sean McVay did comment this week about it, and he's hoping that these are learning opportunities, that the incidents and everything that's transpired this offseason and even towards the middle to late last season will probably have a lasting impact. And Sean McVay said that he hopes that Puka Nacua is going to be a Ram for a long time. So clearly the organization has his full support. Sean McVay has his full support. Sean McVay's comments, I think, were intentional in that he probably knew they would get to him around this time. And we know there's probably been some communication there, but it's a big story. It really is. I mean, I think you can look at this as hey, from Puka's angle, you just want him to make sure that he's getting the help that he needs and that he feels like he needs to have this and that he wants to be proactive and not try to be someone who's saying, hey, I don't need the help or just is in denial or something. Clearly, Puka feels like something is not right. And there's some more from the California Post article that where he says that he's scheduled to be there for a while longer and that he was in there for a substantial period of time before any of these allegations broke with Madison. And McCathern also said that, he's just trying to improve his life. So he's been there for a while. It surprises me that this took this long to really break. And the picture of him, he's coming out of a nice car. He almost has like a mini afro or something. He's got a pretty heavy beard. He's got some Jordan basketball shorts on. He's wearing an NBA shirt that celebrates the 2003 NBA draft. Has LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, and Dwayne Wade on it. He's wearing a T-shirt. And, big picture here is you're going to have to pay this guy. And will the Rams feel good about that, knowing that there clearly are some concerns from Puka's end, knowing that he's got to go and improve himself? So the Rams are in a position where they can sign him to a 4-year, $170 million contract, something in that ballpark this offseason. And I still feel like it's going to happen. I still feel like their intention is to have Puka Nacua be a Ram for the prime of his career and for really as long as he wants. And I know that this is 2026, and I know that this is the social media age where it almost feels like, okay, we're going to wait for someone, a public figure, a high-profile figure. We're going to wait for them to mess up and make a mistake, and we're going to just drag them, and we're going to cancel them, and we're going to say trade them, we don't want them, and this and that. I hope the Rams don't do that. I don't think the Rams are doing that. I think that when you're the public eye like Puka Nacua, and yes, his personality is very strong, and it's a bold personality, and that there's a lot of love in there, but some just lack of judgment there, and I think he's had some missteps. And that's okay to say, but I don't think this is the time to say, oh, cut bait, trade Puka. First of all, you're looking at a guy that you would be selling on the low, which you wouldn't want. And two, you know this is one of the best players in the NFL, and that's not a reason to look past what he's done as far as actions, right? That doesn't give him a pass. That does not give him a pass at all whatsoever. But where the Rams are, I think they've established a culture in their franchise, and that culture is family-oriented. And sometimes you go through stretches where there's members of your family where they make some bad decisions, some questionable decisions, and I think that there has been a cry for help for months for Puka Nacua. And I don't know ultimately what led to this decision to seek help and get help. But if you have anyone in your family that has ever needed help, whether it be anything, right? You know that they, the person, at the end of the day, have to embrace it. They have to be willing to accept help. They have to be willing to go through with it. And Puka Nacua clearly does it, whatever it's his family, whether it's his friends, whether it's Sean McVay, the organization, whoever presented this to him, or if it was his idea, that they moved forward and went with this. And I give him credit just for acknowledging, hey, like maybe something's a little off here. I need some help. I think the hardest thing you can do sometimes is be honest and ask for help. A lot of times it's, hey, you're hiding stuff. You don't want to admit something's wrong. And I think it's just sad to see, because I think Puka is just one of those guys that, in his heart of hearts, is a good dude for there. And I don't think this changes that. I mean, so really interesting. I mean, it is interesting to see that this is another chapter in this wild offseason of Puka Nacua. But clearly there's some accountability there. And if this is just a play for them to kind of have the optics look at, if they're going to use this as a way to kind of play up the optics, fine, then that'll change the perception. But he knows what's on the line here. What's on the line is a massive contract, life-changing money, and the opportunity to continue to get better as a football player and help a Rams team led by him and Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay win another Super Bowl. And I know that he wants to do that as well. So, yeah, some wild news. Puka Nacua entered rehab, and that is what we know right now. That's the information on Puka Nacua. So I just want to say, I hope that we can have a happy ending here, right? Whatever it takes, and that is just hoping that we look back on this one day and said, like Sean McVay said, this is a learning moment and an opportunity to really grow. And I'm hoping that for Puka Nacua.
The tournament is here, one of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets, it's non-stop action from tip to final cutdown. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's how it works. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every single day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. Games, futures, or same-game parlays for even bigger payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Chicago Bears still haven't decided on a location for their new stadium, but the leadership in Chicago did give an update on their progress Wednesday. Lauren Cox has the info on Locked On Bears.
The Bears keep trying to play this game of towing the line, saying, well, we might want to go to Indiana, we might want to stay in Illinois. We could really go either way, and it'll just kind of depend on who gives us the best offer. And I still don't buy that. And every time George McCaskey and Kevin Warren talk about it, they still don't give me any more reason to believe that Indiana is truly a high priority for them. They say that they're considering both sites and that they're really up in the air right now and we could go either way. But their actions and the things they don't say tell us repeatedly that Illinois is the preference. That doesn't mean that there's a 0% chance they go to Indiana, but I believe they're going to exhaust every possibility in Illinois before they reluctantly perhaps agree to go to Indiana. And even then, I'm not so convinced that Indiana is a super, super realistic option, even at this stage of the process. So you may have seen famously the mayor of Hammond, Indiana, where the Bears are looking at their site, has said that, the Bears are already their minds are already made up about moving to Hammond. And the Bears have already made up their mind before most of the public found out about it. They're very confident in Hammond, Indiana, that the Bears are going there. And it's a lot of political posturing and trying to put some public pressure on the Bears to make it seem like they're committing there so that the Bears look like bad guys if they don't go to Hammond, Indiana. But the things that, first of all, that matter more are what George McCaskey and Kevin Warren say. And what matter more than any of that is what the team actually does. And I thought the ways that McCaskey in particular talked about it, to me, continues to signal that Illinois is their preference. So the quote that I want to give you from George McCaskey, and when you hear this quote, at first, it's going to sound very neutral. And that's the way they want it to sound, because they want Illinois to think they're serious about Indiana, and they want Indiana to think they're serious about Illinois, to use the leverage against each other and get the best deal possible. I still don't think Indiana is that strong of a suitor, and we'll explain why in the context of this quote. It's going to sound like 50-50 up in the air, but I think when you read between the lines a little bit and look deeper into this, you'll understand why it's signaling their preference to Illinois. So the quote I want to give you, and McCaskey talked a lot more than this, but I'll just pull out the specific quote, is, quote, "The fact of the matter is we don't have a deal to consider right now." He said, quote, "In Indiana, we have a great site. There's some due diligence that needs to be completed before we can fully evaluate the site, and we have a legislative framework in place. In Arlington Heights, we have a site shovel ready, but we don't yet have a legislative framework." And so he's trying to paint this as an equal, like, hey, we need two things in order to build a stadium. We need a site that's ready to go, and we need a legislative framework. And he's saying in Indiana, we have the framework, but the site's not ready to go. In Illinois, the site's ready to go, but we don't have the legislative framework. And so he's like, well, until we have both at either spot, we can't fully evaluate, and then really both at both spots, we can't fully evaluate what we're going to do here. But I think within that, there's kind of a false equivalency here, as though the Bears just can sit on their hands and wait for both things to happen. But in reality here, yes, they're waiting for the state of Illinois to, through the end of its current legislative session. You know, Kevin Warren said, you know, they're giving Illinois to the end of spring. I think it's like the end of May or somewhere in there, like to pass some kind of legislation that would give the Bears the tax, benefits that they're looking for. And then they can evaluate. They've got the site. They're waiting on Illinois to pass that. And they're giving Illinois until the end of May or whatever to do that. Indiana already has the legislative part done. The site stuff, the Bears can go do. Like, yes, I guess they can't control every single aspect of this process, right? But like, if the Bears were really fired up about Indiana and saying, hey, we really think this is going to be our option, don't you think they would be really fully, firmly, and quickly evaluating that site and going there and inspecting property more, purchasing property, doing all the studies that they need to, and really pushing the envelope on, hey, let's get this site figured out because we've got the legislative thing done. But instead, they're saying, well, we're going to wait until spring and see what Illinois does first before we go all in on this site in Indiana, and because the legislative thing is done. Like, the Bears don't need the state government of Indiana to inspect the site and evaluate the site. I mean, I'm sure there's little like environmental stuff here and there, but like they're not waiting on the Indiana legislature to do something with the site. Like the Bears got the Arlington Heights site done on their own. You didn't need government intervention in major ways, or didn't have to wait for anybody to evaluate the Arlington Heights site, put together their plan for the Arlington Heights site, and buy the Arlington Heights site. There's not a lot of people they're waiting on for the Hammond, Indiana site. And yet they're still waiting on the Hammond, Indiana site. And so that to me signals that they're giving Illinois all this time to work on their package, and they're not in any kind of hurry to build in Indiana or make significant progress and put money into a property in Indiana, because, of course, they bought the Arlington Heights property without knowing for sure whether they were going to build a stadium there. So they could, in theory, buy property in Hammond, Indiana, and without knowing whether they're going to build the stadium there, and then sell it if they don't build the stadium there. But they're not. The Bears have only put real investment into the Arlington Heights site. They have spent not $0 in Hammond, Indiana. I mean, they've flown there. They visited there. But they put a bunch of money in Arlington Heights and very little money into Hammond, Indiana. And in the world of business, money talks and BS walks. And we've got a lot of BS talking right now surrounding Hammond, Indiana, and not a lot of money talking. There's a lot of BS walking They've done literal walking around Hammond, Indiana. They said they've sort of got a potential stadium location sort of sited out, but they still have to work through parking and all the surrounding things around the stadium, which, by the way, are the most important part of this project from a business perspective. Like, that's why this is such BS coming out of Hammond, Indiana, is that in the modern business of building stadiums, most of the team's profit comes from the events that are not Chicago Bears football games. Chicago Bears football games will be 8 or 9 home games out of 365 days in a calendar year. Most of the profit from stadium projects that make it worthwhile from a business perspective is all of the other events in your stadium, all the hotels and restaurants and surrounding spaces that you build around the stadium. That's where the real profit is, where how you can make it make business sense is you have to make money on everything that's not Chicago Bears football in order for a stadium site to work out. Hammond is not a good site around the stadium where the Bears need to make their profit. Arlington Heights is a much bigger space. It's much closer to major highways and obviously major city and suburbs in Chicago. Like, it makes all the financial sense in the world for them to build in Arlington Heights. They're just waiting for the Illinois government to give them what they're looking for. And they continue to use Hammond as a leverage tool and a negotiating tactic and in case of emergency, fail-safe, sure, if Illinois really doesn't meet them where they need them to be and they've got no other alternative, maybe the tax differences can make Hammond a slightly better business deal for them. But that's a worst, I don't want to say worst case scenario, but it's like it's a last case scenario. Like, all the Bears just want this to work in Arlington Heights. They put their money in Arlington Heights. They're being patient for Arlington Heights. The Hammond stuff is just in case plan B, back pocket. Hammond is the side chick in this situation, as much as they don't want to admit it over there. And they want to pretend in Indiana like they're the main chick. And so we're not going to get a concrete answer on this for another couple months, but I just think they continue to point us in one direction repeatedly over and over again.
What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Patriots have their quarterback of the future in Drake Maye, but New England still needs to find Maye a top target for next season. Nick Cattles looks over the options on Locked On Patriots.
Everyone knows the Pats need an alpha wide receiver, but finding that guy could end up being a tremendous challenge. It is a mailbag edition of Locked On Patriots. Let's get to the first question from Gregory 876-16597. Do I have to give all the numbers? Gregory asks, thoughts on the Patriots going after wide receiver 1 with the 31st pick, only if they don't trade for A.J. Brown. Drake Maye deserves a number 1 receiver. We all agree that Drake Maye needs an alpha in that wide receiver room. He needs somebody to draw attention to, right? Somebody who can take that attention from the defense to create opportunities for his teammates. They need a game plan guy, someone who is in that wide receiver room that defenses have to plan for. They have to sit there during their work week and say, how are we going to slow that guy down? Do we have to double him? What do we do? The Patriots need somebody like that at the wide receiver position. Now, as far as if they don't trade for A.J. Brown, the difficulty here, Gregory, first and foremost, is the Patriots might have to wait until that June 1st date we've been talking about for now. It feels like 5 years. If the Eagles are drawing a hard line and saying, we're not going to trade A.J. Brown until that date, then what do? Do you spend the 31st pick on a receiver when you're confident that you're going to get A.J. Brown in the next couple of months? Do you not take a wide receiver early in the draft because you feel that way? That's the first thing. That's the first difficulty in this conversation. My second thought here is that the Patriots, they cannot reach. They cannot reach for a wide receiver at number 31. If you feel like a guy has fallen to you and you feel like that receiver could be an alpha, then it makes sense to make that pick. But if you're not sold, if there's any question, and I mean any question, if there is a 10% gut feeling that this guy might not be good enough to be that alpha, if there's any doubt in that room, then I'm not spending a first-round pick at that position. So you can't allow yourself to reach. You can't allow yourself to be that desperate. As badly as we know Drake Maye needs that guy, you cannot reach. We talked about it. Mike Vrabel talked about it this week in Arizona. When you reach, you end up hurting yourself. You end up hurting your football team. So don't reach for a wide receiver at number 31. We also have to think about if you do spend a pick, that 31st pick on a wideout, we have to acknowledge you are asking a lot of that rookie. Because if you're going to draft that guy in the first round, you're going to play him, and you're going to play him a decent amount, and you really need him to make an impact in year one. You don't want to drag your feet, and then year 2 or 3, he starts to show up. If you're spending that first-round pick on a wide receiver, it's because you believe that guy is better than everybody else you've got in that room, except for maybe Romeo Doubs. So he's got to make an immediate impact. And that's made more difficult because it would be that receiver's first year in the Josh McDaniels offense. Now, of course, Romeo Doubs is going to have his first year in McDaniels offense, but don't get it twisted. Romeo Doubs has been in the league for a number of years, and he understands at a higher level what he has to do in McDaniels offense than somebody who just got drafted. That player, if you pick them at number 31, would have to earn their reps. So how long does that take? If you draft somebody at 31 and it takes him a couple of months to earn reps at practice, he's not going to make that immediate impact. And we all know what happens when rookies don't make an immediate impact when a lot is expected of them. The pressure mounts, people start getting concerned. In a perfect world, a legitimate talent falls to 31, and that talent ends up working out in the long term. That's why I still lean towards acquiring a veteran. All right, next question. A casual Pats fan. Where are we on using the A.J. Brown capital to trade up for one of Jordan Tyson or Mekhi Lemon instead? Both have issues, sure, but both are so much younger. Actually, growing with May would be the dream. I am open to any idea that gets May a true number 1 wide receiver option. That's why I'm open to the idea of spending that 31st pick on a wide receiver. Trading up would be on that list of ideas to try to get May that kind of dude. Now, let's look at what it would take. Mekhi Lemon. If you're into Mekhi Lemon, he's likely going to be in the top 15. So I went and I looked up Rich Hill's 2026 trade chart value, right? What we're looking at as far as value for each pick. For the Patriots to move up from 31 to 15, they need 315 points. The 15th pick in the Rich Hill 2026 trade value chart is worth 315 points. The 31st pick is 190 points, which means you need to make up 125 points to get that deal done. What would you have to give up if you were the Patriots to make up that 125 points? You'd have to give up number 63 and number 95. So let me ask you this question, a casual Pats fan. Would you be willing to give up your first round pick or swap it, right? Would you be willing to give that 31st pick, your second round pick, and your third round pick to move up those 16 spots to draft Mekhi Lemon at 15? I wouldn't. I think it's too much. I think it's too much to give up a second and a third to move up from 31 to 15. Second hypothetical, Jordan Tyson. Let's say he goes 20th in the draft. That is 269 points. Again, the 31st pick is 190, which means you're 79 points short. So to move up from 31 to 20 to draft Jordan Tyson, you would have to give up your second round pick. Now, I think that's less crazy if you were confident in Jordan Tyson. I'm not necessarily sold on Jordan Tyson. Lots of injury history. Most recently, you look at the soft tissue issue with the hamstring. And we all know Mike Vrabel, not a fan of soft tissue injuries. I would rather deal for a known commodity. Let's go to Paper Waves DE. Thoughts on Kyle Williams stepping into a bigger role in year 2 and becoming a big factor for the offense? I want to dig more into Kyle Williams eventually as we get past the draft stuff, but this is a huge offseason for Kyle Williams. Don't get it twisted. He showed flashes last season. Some good line of scrimmage releases you could see. He did a great job of tracking the football on 2 or 3 big plays down the field. His explosivity was seen in Tampa on that touchdown, that catch and run. So he did show you some of those flashes, but it's only year 2. He has the long speed, 4.40, but there are some questions. Some of the questions that Kyle Williams has to answer. Can he get reps to establish chemistry with Drake Maye? Because that was a problem. Williams and Maye weren't always on the same page. That has to be addressed and fixed before you get into the 2026 season. Secondly, will Williams increase his play strength? This is something that Mike Vrabel has harped on multiple times when discussing Kyle Williams. He needs to get stronger because if he gets jammed at the line of scrimmage, he's got to be able to fight through that jam. So can he increase his play strength? He should be able to. We'll see if he executes. Third question, can he catch the ball with his hands more? That might sound funny, but sometimes Kyle Williams, when he was coming out into the draft last year, he was known as a guy who caught a lot of footballs with his body. Can he catch footballs with his hands? That's going to be one of the biggest questions. Second year in the offense, should bring a level of confidence, a level of comfort that was not there in 2025. And, if Kyle Williams makes that jump, if he makes a second-year leap, so to speak, that would obviously be huge. But yes, it is a big, big season, off-season for Kyle Williams.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 NFL. If you follow basketball or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and on campus going up every week just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 college wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 NFL.